Oh, right. I can't click that. Okay.
Just use the arrow key. That should...
So far, so good.
Okay. We renounce program. Program is the prescriptive determining of our built environment. Every building is created for a specific purpose by the client, owner, or architect, and imposed upon the occupant. This process does a disservice to all involved, limiting the plastic production of the architect, the realization of the dream of the client, and the creative evolution of the occupant.
Modernists approach program deterministically, understanding it to be synonymous with function. Form follows function just as form follows program. Their intense appetite for efficiency mandated a direct correlation between form and use, and thus modernist conceptions of program became prescriptively translated into form. Postmodernists adamantly rejected this approach to program, arguing that it was an obsolete vestige of functionalist polemics. But despite objections to the rhetoric of modernist functionalism, postmodernists proceeded in designing with conventional understandings of program. A house was still a house. It was just that the discourse on the topic of the program had become exhausted. In the 1970s, two young architects, who you may recognize more easily here, Rem Koolhaas and Bernard Schumi, liberated program from its affiliations with functionalism and a prescriptive relationship to form, imbuing it with a legacy of indeterminacy that it maintained for the next 30 years. Together, these architects transformed program from a spatially determinate instrument to an indeterminate one, reintroducing program as a generative tool. In 2006, Praxis analyzed contemporary discourse on the subject of program, declaring that as program's material palette expands, so do the opportunities and range of operations for its architectural occupation. Are we comfortable with this direction? We argue that the multiplying of options serves only to further entrench the role of program in the architect's design process.
This is our voluntary and inevitable jump into the void, the total abandonment of the program. It is nonetheless seductive. Watch a primitive man stumbling upon an ancient forest or a sacred cave, full of mystery and pregnant with possibility. A forest is itself first, in a mute dialogue with the sun and planets. A cave is itself first, indebted to nothing but a careless stream and the pull of gravity. They welcome and nurture all. A mission is free except for those with eyes shut, hearts closed, and essentially dead. The forest and the cave break the silence for the first time in history. They say, come to your emancipation.
The design process should avoid a refined program of intent and instead mine the raw deposits of architectural imagination. The process of design will prioritize and blossom from essential elements. These resources, ripe for creative labor, should include the following: material definition, treatment and shaping, phenomenological study and exploration, human scale in an abstract mode, pre-existing climatic conditions. It will be cultivated from ubiquitous infrastructure and enable unlimited programmatic potential, embracing it as a second nature and releasing it a new world for the user as explored. The architecture is the frontier and the user is the settler.
The new architecture is a jungle ripe with potential which belongs to everyone. A space ignorant of program empowers users to personalize their environment, defining their own interactions with the architecture. However, the space is not a blank canvas. The architect is free to pursue a plastic creation. Users are forced to confront the character of the architecture which challenges their entrenched habits. A new creativity is unleashed.
Right? So, do you want to come back? Yeah, why don't you? Do you want to aid us in giving hints of your cat? So obviously, contrast is against prescribed programs. target is?
The target for us was a new, someone can stop me, but a new mode of producing the need to assign a program to each space that you design.
Analogy.
The natural environment, so the forest cave story was the idea, I guess, was that a primitive man walking through the forest looking for a place to live or a place to meet or to inhabit is there are elements of the natural environment which suggest ways of inhabiting a tree which might house a tree house or a cave which might shelter you, but they don't. But they also challenge the way that you would normally inhabit places, because the cave maybe isn't what you're used to, and so it forces you to question the way in which you inhabit a space.
Theory?
We're studying the discourse that more of the contemporary discourse, modernism, postmodernism, how that's evolved over the last 50 to 60 years, and
So Koolhaas, Schumi.
yeah, and despite it sort of becoming radicalized each time, it's still viewed as this generative tool and one that is predetermined by the architect and the client relationship. And so we're proposing that the next step and the more provocative and creative one is to imagine a design process that is liberated from programming and titling spaces, and that is left to the inhabitants to decide what their space is. That essentially liberates the designer and the person who is inhabiting the space. Because they're not told this is what we view this building as. This is the program for the building.
And Taylor's manifesto, effectively.
We also found some theory in the positive sense for us in people like who Mark made us aware of, Hans Herman,
Herman Hertzberger.
who doesn't design spaces without program, but has a goal of designing spaces which allow the user to personalize their environment, to create their own associations with the architecture, which we wanted to take to an extreme.
Unfinished spaces, suggestive fragments, yeah, that don't get occupied.
But not necessarily. I guess unfinished. You could describe them as unfinished. We could also say that they're perfectly finished.
Thoughts on program?
Okay, well, I have a suggestion here, and part of and a thought that might be a question, because I think what interests me about this exercise is that already just in these two that we're seeing, I like the boldness. So the idea is like take a cliche, take an assumption, take some given or a convention of what architecture is about and challenge it, question that. But then what we want to do is the sort of the avant-garde play of this would be to say to push it, to not be not try to be too practical. I mean, the idea is to push to the extreme, take sort of the reductio ad absurdum, and see what it really asks.